Hi, my name is Shazam Zola, and this is my final research project on educational disparity impacts on the Latino community. Introduction. Imagine a student whose potential is limitless but cut short of opportunities due to the educational system that underestimates and underfunds them. For many Latino students, that is in fact the harsh reality. Latino communities are the largest ethnic minority group in the United States that continue to face significant educational challenges. The lack of resources and opportunities, underfunded schools, limited access to advanced coursework, language barriers, and systematic biases ultimately prevent them from reaching their academic goals and full potential. In the long term, it affects their career opportunities, leaving them in a continuous cycle of poverty throughout generations. Research topic and significance. Investigate how educational disparities influence social economic outcomes of Latino communities in the United States. It would significantly explore unequal educational opportunities and hold the purpose of bringing more awareness by addressing the ongoing issue that affects the fastest growing demographic in the United States. They're the fastest growing due to the combination of the high birth rates within the community, and ongoing immigration from Latin American countries. Thesis. Educational disparity in Latino communities limit social economic mobility and reinforce systematic inequalities such as funding, language discrimination, and underrepresentation. Unequal funding and resources in Latin majority districts, limited access to advanced coursework and extracurriculars, language barriers that affect ultimately their academic performance, and systematic biases held by the teachers and the system that hold low expectations and stereotypes on these students. Impact of funding inequalities. Schools in low income areas tend to rely on the local poverty tax. This results in larger class sizes, outdated resources, fewer AP courses, and limited college preparations, ultimately reducing chances for higher education and upward mobility. This is a connection to sociology imagination by that was reviewed in the course. Understanding that these disparities are a personal trouble from a public issue. In this graph, it shows the percent of low income students in public schools as of 2011. California is the highest with the 50 and above, and most of the lower states with a national average of 48. Historical context, segregation, and exclusion were mainstreamed towards education. There was a English only policy held in the 20th century that had punished students for speaking Spanish, ultimately affecting their self-esteem and their cultural identity. This continues to be in effect in today as many parents who lived during this time decided that it was best to only teach their children English, and therefore they have the lack of connection to their culture and it affects them mentally. Um, Continuing on, the East LA walkouts was a historical event in the 60s held by teachers, students, and families who wanted to reform the educational system in these Latino communities. This is a connection to English language learners and the Educational Act of 1968. Biases and stereotypes. Teachers held low expectations on these students, ultimately discouraging them. Stereotypes limit access to advanced coursework and ultimately affect them. The impact was lower educational or academic confidence, reduce college attendance, and limit career opportunities or options. And this is a connection to another source. as it was thought that they were less simply because of the color of their skin. Another stereotype or saying that teachers most likely to like would tell the students is that they would their work better with their hands than with their mind. So some people might argue that this isn't an issue anymore due to the dropout rates decreasing and college enrollment increasing. So college dropout rates for Hispanic students decreased from 34% in 1996 to 10% in 2016. College enrollment rose from 10% in 2005 to 20% in 2021. Latino families value education and they would offer the motivation and emotional support. And they were thought, obviously, that they have community networks that kind of bridge the structural disadvantage and collaborate to overcoming the systematic challenges. Despite that, there are still gaps in funding and support itself. Continuing off the counter argument, these are um, graphs of both the college and the dropout rates. Conclusion, well, adding on to the conclusion, the consequences of educational disparity on Latino communities, which is framed as a crisis rather than an issue. Ultimately, a crisis due to the failed social and educational policies over time. Action is needed for better funding models for schools in low income areas and expansion on both teaching and teacher training to address systematic inequalities and foster an inclusive environment. Connection to some terms. It ultimately highlights inequalities in funding and access to resources, the daily interactions and biases that shape the student's self-identity, limited access to network and resources that affect the student's success and ability to attend college or receive high paying jobs, and then discrimination, language discrimination, and cultural biases impact the student's self confidence and engagement in the classroom. It is, in fact, an issue. Connection to another source. First generation students often face greater challenges due to being compared to their peers and dealing with both barriers and language barriers and systematic inequalities. Connecting to another term of nature versus nurture, the natural aspects of the language of an exposure to multiple languages in Latino families can impact the development and the student's performance in the classroom. And then the nurture aspects include social economic factors, cultural influences, discrimination, and systematic inequalities, and the environment context. So, creating an uplifting environment. Overall, this is an issue, and it is important to ensure equal opportunities for Latino students to help and create a positive, inclusive place for growth and success. The call to action is to increase awareness of education disparity and to want and try to gear towards getting the systematic changes to support these students' needs and commit in ensuring that all students can thrive.